pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Is there anybody for public input? Anyone? All right, review and approve council agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Someone just walked in.
Were you here for public input?
I'm a reporter with the St. Cloud Times.
I figured that. She was carrying a pencil.
Uh-oh, we should have shut the door earlier then.
Right. All right, consent agenda items. Item A, approve 4/12/21 Board of Appeal and Equalization minutes. Item B, approve on-sale liquor license for Southern Hospitality Concessions. Item C, approve renewal of joint powers authority with the state of Minnesota for the police department to access state records. Item D, approve sergeant promotion. And item E, approve proposed site-wide internet proposal at the ledge.
Move to approve, or second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Item E, 2019 audit.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, my name is Justin McGraw. I'm with Conway Duke and Schmiesian, the city's auditors. And I'm here tonight to present the December 31, 2019 audit report. In a couple weeks, we'll be back out here working on the 2020 audit. So, starting on you can go to the next slide there, Shauna. So, looking at our audit report, you got a few documents in front of you. The thicker bound document is the official audit report. We also issue a management letter, and then the presentation you see today. So, this presentation I'm going through right now is really a summation of everything that's in your audit report. So if you're looking for a little more detail or a little more insight, that's a great place to start. Otherwise, you can always ask as I'm going through the presentation. So our auditor's report, the first few pages of our report outlines what our report is, what the intent of our report is, the standards we use to determine if your financial statements are free from material misstatement and can be relied upon. And then on the next slide, the big takeaway is that first bullet. The financial statements are presented fairly in our opinion. They can be relied upon for gauging performance of the city as well as decision-making purposes. Sorry about that. Jumping into the numbers on the next slide. Here's your statement of net position for the city as of 12/31/2019, and we compare it against 2018, so you can kind of see some of the changes that happened in your balances during the year. Starting at the top, current assets, these would be items like cash, accounts receivable, prepaid insurance, those types of things. You see, looking at 18 into 20, or 2018 into 2019, you had a big decrease there. The reason for that is primarily due to your cash balances. If you remember, back in 2018, you had a bunch of cash come in for the amphitheater project, and then in 2019, a lot of that cash got spent and converted into the next item down, your non-current assets. So non-current assets are your capital assets, infrastructure, buildings, equipment, those types of items. So you can kind of see the change in current and non-current between 2019 and 2018 are almost inverse, as that cash was converted into the amphitheater. Keep going down the line. Your current liabilities, these are your kind of your day-to-day bills, accounts payable, payroll, those types of items. You see there was an increase in those balances in 2019 compared to 2018. A lot of that is stemming from the amphitheater project itself, as far as work was done, and those expenses were incurred, but they were paid subsequently in 2020. Then looking at your long-term liabilities, primarily debt is your largest long-term liability. You can see here, you had decreases across your long-term liabilities, and that's really due to you had no new debt in 2019, and you continue to make those scheduled payments on your outstanding debt throughout the year. And then your net investment, or excuse me, net position, This is essentially if you paid all your debts and you sold all the assets of the city, this is kind of what's left over. You can see here, you're kind of continuing that trend of increasing that net position of the city, even though the composition of that kind of switches some categories. And that net investment in capital assets in the amphitheater project had a lot to do with that. The restricted balance that you had in 2018 was primarily restricted cash that was reserved for use on the amphitheater project. As that cash got spent, turned into a physical asset, it becomes part of your net investment in capital assets. So that's the city as a whole. All operations, all funds, all activities. So now we'll move into some of the individual funds of the city, starting with the general fund. General fund's the main operating fund of the city. And we got a slide here of your cash balance as it sits in 2019, and then the 4 years prior to kind of see the trend of where that has been. There was an increase in 2019 compared to 2018. And the main driver of that is transfers into the general fund from your local option sales tax fund. On the next slide, please, we got the activity of the general fund. So your revenues, expenditures, and your overall fund balance. Looking at 2019, your revenues did outpace your expenditures in that general fund, and that does include transfers. So the transfers into that general fund from the local option sales tax fund is kind of what pushed your other financing sources and the revenues above your expenses and your other financing uses. And then your fund balance. So this is kind of a good gauge of the financial health of the general fund is that fund balance. And one metric we use is your fund balance in terms of months worth of expenditures. So sitting in 2019, you're at about 8.5 months of expenditures sitting in fund balance in your general fund. So that's a good buffer to have if there's any delays in counting your state remittances. The general fund can kind of weather any of those experiences. And then we'll look in a little bit more detail on the next slide at your revenues and expenditures. The general fund revenues, we look at these by source. Where does that revenue come from? You can see here, again, 2019 and the previous 4 years, looking at some of the changes between the years, tax revenues. So you did see a big increase in tax revenues. A lot of that is due to your levy. I mean, it was reflected in your levy. And then some electric franchise taxes as well that were kind of a new item in 2019 that you didn't have in 2018. And then the next slide, we'll move on to the expenditures. And for your expenditures, we look at these by department or by function. So you can see where the use of funds is and what department. And again, if you're looking for a little more detail, the general fund in the financial statements kind of goes into that not only by department, but by the type of expense, the functional type of expense, if you will. So public safety, public works have historically, the last couple of years, been the largest departments for use of funds in the city. You can see here, public safety did have actually an increase in 2019 compared to 2018. And these are your current expenditures, so the regular operations of these departments, as well as capital outlay, so any purchase of equipment, projects, they're also reflected in these numbers. So the capital outlay, depending on your CIP plan, can have a big impact on which one of these departments has the lion's share of your expenditures. And that's kind of what happened with the Public Works Department in 2019. So you saw, public safety in 2019, you purchased a new squad car, related equipment, and warning sirens to be placed around the city. And your public works, did decrease a little bit. And the decrease we saw on that is on the operation side, mainly personnel costs, those types of items. But they were offset by increases in capital outlay. I think it was a new snowplow was purchased. And there's some street project expenditures in there as well. And that's the general fund. Moving on to the special revenue funds. So on here, we show the change in fund balance and the overall fund balance of the special revenue funds. The hope is that those funds will be self-sufficient and kind of work for their intended purpose. Starting on the first, right off the bat here, the local sales tax, you saw a large decrease in that fund balance from where it was in 2018. That's primarily transfers out. So that sales tax fund supports other areas of the city. and those funds being transferred out, reduced that fund balance. And then on the next slide, TIF districts. So one I want to touch on was the TIF district number 2. You saw a large decrease in that fund balance as well. That did have a healthy fund balance, and it's going to be used to support your debt service payments. I think it was the 2014 A debt. So as those payments are being made, that fund balance will continue to be drawn down. And then on the next slide, we have the capital project funds. So these capital project funds, and especially this slide here, gives a good visual of the life cycle of a typical project that a city would run, the beginning, the middle, and kind of the end. So the amphitheater in 2019 was in full swing. A lot of work was being done at the amphitheater during that time. So you saw a large decrease in that fund balance as those funds were being spent putting that amphitheater together. And then some of the other ones, River's Edge did have some work done in 2019, and there was transfers in again from that sales tax fund to help fund some of those improvements. And then we'll move on to the proprietary funds. So these are the business type activities of the city. So water, sewer. We'll start with the water fund. Looking at your cash and investment balances. So you can see here where you were in 2015 to how you were able to get to 2019. You're seeing those consistent increases in that cash balance. And if you look at your financial statements, you look at your cash flow statement, that's primarily driven by operations. So what that tells us as auditors that your rates are set at a level to build up that reserve, still fund your operating costs, and get to that healthy reserve goal. If you have some larger projects coming down the line for your water fund, you're sitting in a good place to fund those going forward. So the rate increases that you've been working on, you're seeing that the consequences or the results of that in your cash balance. It's looking very, very healthy for a water fund. And then on page 12, we'll look at the operations, the activity of the water fund. So revenues, expenditures, you can see your revenues are outpacing your expenditures, and some of those expenditures are non-cash, like your depreciation. So I think you have a couple $100,000 of depreciation just in your water fund. It's not using cash, but it's that wear and tear on those existing assets, the infrastructure. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you see that change in fund balance. It doesn't necessarily equate to, or excuse me, a change in net position equate to a change in cash balance. And then on the next slide, we look at the water fund, the net income of that water fund, and we do take away out that depreciation amount to kind of see some of the cash effects of your activities and compare it against your bond requirements, your principal payments. You can see here you're bringing in enough cash to make those scheduled debt payments. So the water fund is sitting in a good spot from a debt service standpoint. And then on the next slide, we'll go into the sewer fund. Again, cash balances, it's kind of got a similar story to the water fund here. Those steady increases that it's been making over the years. It's come a long way in 5 years. Excuse me. And again, the driver of that, if you look at your cash flow statement, is operations. The rates being set at an appropriate level to cover operations and build that reserve. And we'll look at the operations on the next slide. So looking at your revenues, expenditures, and your net income, net loss amount. So you see the sewer fund does have a net loss, and it's at such a high level of depreciation on those existing assets that I think it's like $487,000 that if you're not quite fully funding depreciation, you're at 75% of that, which is very good for a sewer fund. I know a lot of sewer funds out there that really struggle with that piece, and hopefully funding the depreciation so that in the future when there's an eventual replacement, you have some cash available to do that. So that's the numbers I was going to cover tonight for 2019. In addition to auditing your books, we also look at a few other items here up on the slide. So legal compliance. So one of the things we look at is the city's compliance with state statutes from items such as conflicts of interest, contracts and bidding, depository of public funds, among a few others. We're happy to report that we came across no issues of non-compliance. So what that usually tells us as auditors is Shauna and her team here, they know what the rules are, and they're making sure that they're being followed. So we commend them on that. And then another thing we look at is internal control of the city, how financial information flows through the city from the time a bill comes in the mail to the time that check goes out. So we noted no issues with the control around your financial activities, your financial accounting and reporting. So again, having that system in place and making sure that those steps are being followed, proper checks and balances, goes a long way. And then on the next slide, required communications here. So in addition to the audit report that we give you, we also send you probably have a smaller bound document. We call it a management letter. It's kind of let you know how the audit went. So obviously it's 2021, and here I am delivering 2019's audit report. With the pandemic and your accounting software issues, we had a lot of hurdles to overcome this year, but we're happy to report that everybody here at the city was very helpful and getting us the information we needed, even though it took us a little bit of time. So we thank Shauna, Keith, Carla, and everybody else here. I know it's not always easy to ask to deal with auditors when you're trying to keep current operations going, and we're asking questions about things that happened 6, 12 months ago. But we do appreciate their help. And then the last item, recommendations. So as we go through the audit, if you come across best practices or feel like there's an informational thing we'd like you to be aware of, this is kind of where we put that. The one thing, new accounting standards is one that comes up from time to time. And there was a new accounting standard, GASB statement number 95, and that relates to other accounting standards, and the Government Accounting Standards Board delayed or postponed some implementation dates of old standards due to the pandemic. So we give cities and governments more time to do some research on the new standards, how they're going to implement them, and put that in place. So the big one that we see from an auditor standpoint is leases. In the past, if you do lease certain equipment, facilities, that hasn't been something that you would see on your financial statement in your books. It would be more of a note disclosure item. With that new standard, you're going to see a financial statement item on there. You'll see some new items. They have a right to use asset and a lease liability. So that's something to be aware of. That's a few years down the line now with this implementation. And then credit card policy and electronic wires transfer policy. So this is an item that we noted with your old bank, that there was not a policy in place to handle these types of transactions. From my understanding, I'll talk with Keith, Jana, with the switch to the Falcon National Bank, these policies have been updated, and this will be an item that'll fall off on your 2020 audit. So good, great job there. So, and then the last slide, it's my contact information. So if you're looking through some of the stuff in your free time and you have questions that come up, or if you think I wish I asked Justin this or that, feel free to reach out, call, email, or if you're ever in Litchfield, feel free to stop by the office. So with that, I'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions right now?
All right, Council, got any questions?
No, I read the material that was sent out, and I thought, there's nothing to put you to sleep better than reading all of that stuff. I spent days trying to read this stuff. But I find it encouraging that the recommendations that you had made in there are being taken care of. So I'm really comfortable. I think the city has done a really good job.
I agree.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank Justin and his staff, and then also a special thanks for Carla and Keith. This last year has been very trying, and they've spent a lot of time trying to do this, and this has been really outside the norm for you guys and for us. And so the work that you guys all did to make this happen, and to know that just in a few weeks you're going to start the 2020 audit is really reassuring. So, but I don't think any of us could say that we anticipated, the things that we did. But you guys worked through it, and I appreciate all your work, every one of you.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'm not taking any credit for it other than just making you guys available.
All right, any other questions? There are a few fund transfers and closures we need, and we need to approve the audit.
agenda to approve the audit?
And the fund transfers?
Yes.
I'll
Not agenda
second.
motion, I'm sorry.
Your second?
I'll
Ken.
second.
Oh, all right, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Item B, final plat, Park Square, Third Edition Marketplace.
Mayor Miller, council members, I won't belabor this too much for you. This is basically the finalization of what started as the planned unit development and the prelim plat for Marketplace and the Marketplace Annex, just under a year ago. This is just buttoning that up. We could have done it at the onset, but they opted to hold off on the final plat at that time, just to kind of see how things ironed out and be sure that they wanted to move forward with everything. As you can tell, things have been progressing pretty well there, really brightened up the property. The plat is kind of finalizing that planned unit development to put those different businesses on their own parcels the way they probably should have been from the onset. So this is really just the final stage in that. The project is still out for MnDOT review. We haven't had their comments back, but we'll certainly incorporate those. I did put that as a condition of the resolution and the recommendation. I don't expect they'll have much in the way of comments, being there's no access or any intersections or anything changing with the plats. Everything stays as is, so their comments should be probably pretty routine. I'd recommend adoption of the resolution as noted. We could open up for any questions.
Council, your wishes?
Move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, nonprofit group, Don Peck chairs.
Evening, council. I'm here tonight for you guys to review. In your packets, if you had a chance to review all 5 proposals that were submitted, I am here to tell you that Babe Ruth today withdrew their proposal. They just don't feel they can find enough bodies to be able to pull this off. So they respectfully withdrew. So that leaves us with 4 for your consideration tonight, not in any certain order. But we have Waite Park Scout Unit, Troops 20 and, Ken, which troops? Because I was hard to read.
Troop 20.
20, okay. We have Apollo Diamond Booster Club, Apollo Football, and Dancing with the Stars St. Cloud Prime. I don't know if you want me to kind of go through these. Did you guys review them? I guess I just open it up for your comments and questions of which group that you would like to
Do all,
award this
do
to.
the remaining 4 fit your needs?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see any problem with getting it done when it needs to be done? With
Nope,
either-
nope,
Any
yeah.
of the 4?
Nope, I don't.
All right, council, any comments?
What's St. Cloud Pride?
Shauna, you want to explain? Yeah. Or do you know any more about this than me?
Other than that it's just a local organization that, and there is so they have a Dancing with the Stars and then event, and what they do is each person that participates in that raises money towards a specific group. So St. Cloud Pride is one of those organizations that I'm just trying to see if they had anything else in there. So what they do, it's for community education panels and youth scholarships is what the funding would go towards for that they would be raising money for. That's what the money would go towards, would be those things for the community.
St. Cloud Hockey Association didn't return?
No, you're
Nope,
looking
I
at,
gave you that list
Yeah.
of what was sent and what.
you're looking at
people-
the ones that returned anything.
Yep.
Well, coming here tonight, I didn't know if it was Babe Ruth or Troop 20, so for me, the decision is easy.
Made it simpler, huh?
Yep. I didn't know which one to go with, so I was,
Keep it in the city.
we gotcha.
You don't have a problem with that, Ken? I know you're involved in that. You don't have a problem? You think you got enough guys, enough girls, guys, women, boys, men, whatever,
If they say they can do it, they'll do it.
to
Yep.
get it done?
I'll
The only
make a
problem
mo-
I seen with the Boy Scouts was I thought there was an age limit That was put on there, or was there not?
There is, and they said that they would just use 15 and olders, for, it, which I'm fine with, so.
Yeah, and I-
Really, that was just because the chairs of stacking them would be more difficult for the younger kids.
And there's other things they can do.
that
There's
is
boxes,
true.
the empty
That is
boxes,
true.
somebody's gotta put those away. Somebody's
Yeah.
gotta, I mean, there's other things to do besides
That is true.
some of the physical
There,
stuff.
there is, yeah, and it would have been my recommendation to look at the two that were in Wade Park, so.
All right, well, like you say, Frank, that made it simple. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to allow Troop 20 to unpack the chairs.
I'll second.
Can I just clarify, because what it does include in the motion is,
Yep.
is that, and then to receive a 2,500 donation for unpacking the chairs as outlined in the agreement, and then they are also required to sign a waiver form.
Sure,
Would you include that in your motion?
that's included. in the
Okay,
motion.
I just want to verify that.
And the
I
2,500,
assumed they were gonna do it for the
and
2,500.
the 2,500 comes from charitable gambling.
Don't take my waiver out of that. Definitely put my waiver
Yeah,
in that.
see, I've been hanging around Paul enough to know I have to do these things.
Paul has to be in the action too.
We sh-
Are there box cutters involved in this?
No,
Okay, sign my waiver.
All right, I got a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thanks, Bill. All right, item D, consideration of police officer candidates for hire.
I'd like to make a motion at this time to hire 3 officers. First officer to be hired would be Derek Nelson at pay grade 7, step 9. Second officer to be hired would be Joshua Brown at grade 7, step 9. And third officer would be Brent Fandle, grade 7, step 1. And that would be effective immediately?
No, they,
Or determined,
On passing
once
over-
all background and,
Yeah,
and
a
ensure
conditional-
all-
Employment.
all that
condition.
good stuff gets
And-
squared away.
can I just add to that, Mike, if you would, if you don't mind, is that they would be, their employment would be staggered 3 different dates based
Oh,
off the
definitely.
order that you just announced them?
Right.
Yep.
And then
And the
eligibility list,
You want that separate or?
it can be the same, or either way, whichever you prefer,
just leave the eligibility list open until December 31st.
of 2021.
Okay, and in that order of the eligibility up until December 31st of 21, would be number 1, Jake Wetland, and number 2,
You don't need to name the names, just that, you just set the date.
Okay.
okay,
The eligibility list itself is
Yes.
determined by the Civil Service Board.
okay.
Because later on,
That could
if
all
we want to
change.
use that, we can choose to
Yes.
interview again.
Yeah, that's correct.
So don't set a priority on that.
So our motion was to hire 2 at step 9.
Yep.
I have
One
I
at
have the
step
motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion.
Vic?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. All right, let's see, approve bills.
Motion to approve bills.
I'll second.
Further discussion.
Yeah. Do we pay Service Master to clean them? Is that gonna be like an ongoing thing, or is it?
Yeah. We have a contract with Service Master to do additional cleaning during COVID.
Yeah,
So they're doing, they come in with their, I don't want to call it fumigation kind of things.
a
in different-
fogger, probably.
A lot of those kinds of things in our different facilities. And then we have an ongoing contract that we will have at the amphitheater for them to do the cleaning out at the amphitheater as well.
So what is that? Is that fogging once a month, or how?
So when we do like the community park,
Yeah.
we
like
do
the-
it, we fog it after each event that somebody's renting it. We have them come in there and clean that.
Okay, so does this include the other bathrooms, like right down here?
Yes.
By community building, pickleball
And
courts?
the
So
en-
they're going and fog in our
Yeah.
general,
Yes.
we have our COVID policy and we set that they do it 3 days a week. on it. And that's
Oh,
posted
really?
on the door that this is where it's being done. And we're gonna carry that through the summer because we're not sure where we're at, and I don't have any staff to go down and clean anyway, so.
But we also don't have the abilities to do the special
So
cleaning that
special
we do
cleaning and all
that
that.
Service Master does.
Is that getting paid out of the
We-
COVID funds?
We had
that
some of that, yep.
Well,
Now, we had it under the CARES Act. Now, we're waiting to find out whether or not what the funding situation is gonna be with this additional money. And so some of that would be eligible for some of those things as well, I would assume, but we don't know yet.
Well, there's that second one that came by, and that's the one that you
That's the
don't
one
know.
I'm talking about, yeah.
So, still another question.
Yeah.
The $450 bill we're paying this time, is that a monthly fee, or is that
Yeah.
every time they do it, or what are we
I
talking about
believe
here?
it was a monthly fee, Frank, so.
So 3 times a week?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a pretty good deal.
We, quite frankly, we get a better job done than trying to hire seasonal and try to make sure that they do it right. We spend more time supervising them to make sure and saying, well, you didn't do this right, didn't do
I
that
mean,
right.
if that's 12 trips
So
for all of them,
I believe, Frank, and let me look into it and I'll get
Okay.
back to you personally on that. Give me a couple days though, please, if you
Sure.
wouldn't mind. Yeah,
all right,
I can.
All right, any other questions on the bills?
I'll move to pay the bills. Or Vic did, I think. Well, you have a motion in a second.
That was discussion, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. That's all I got.
I have one thing. We are, I know Monica had contacted everyone to see about meeting with our consultant, Charlene Stevens, on the finance director search. And we are set to do that next Tuesday, the 25th at 4:30 PM. I would anticipate that it would be about an hour. I don't think it'll take longer than that to do that. I will send you an email. It's some information that she has just to help you understand
Yep.
the questions and stuff. So look for that in your email in the next couple of days.
I have a question on that. That's
Yeah.
not gonna be a virtual one, I hope.
No,
No,
it's
no,
in
we're gonna do that
person.
in person.
Yep, it's all in person.
That's good.
I know.
Happened tonight.
I know.
Anything else? Bill? John? Carla? St. Cloud Times. Got any questions? Paul? John? Anybody? Nobody? All right, we are adjourned at 7:02. See you, Chief, did you?